Players all over the world have struggled to earn the Grandmaster title. Which players will earn a norm? Which players will go home with the prize? Welcome to the 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress. Hello chess fans, and welcome back to St. Louis for the first ever named 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress. My name is Ben Simon, and I'm joined alongside Grandmaster Josh Friedel. Josh, thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great time for the next 6 days. We have plenty of rounds of action to bring to you. We have two fields, a Grandmaster Norm field and an International Master Norm field, and the whole purpose of this event is to get people on the road to getting their titles, their chess doctorates, if you will. Josh, there's a lot of confusion as far as how does one become a grandmaster? Tell us about your journey toward the title.
Well, I certainly went up from the bottom. My first ever rating was actually 868, so I started pretty much as low as it goes. Slowly got up there. I got my IM norms at a variety of places, but I remember making the IM title fairly at a normal level, like I would make my norms pretty steadily. The Grandmaster title was quite a challenge. I made my first two norms in 2005, and then it took me 3 years to make my third norm. And I came close a bunch of tournaments, but a lot of the times I find you need a little bit of luck. You need to play the right people. There were times when I didn't play enough foreign players, and I didn't get my norm for that reason. Luckily for these players, that's not going to be a problem, but you need to play really well, have a little bit of luck, and eventually persistence will get you there.
Well, you said that for these players it won't be a problem because it is a round robin, all play all. The tournaments that you earned your norms in, were they anything like what we're going to see here for the next week? Mostly
not. I made my norms in sort of an unusual way. I made two of my Grandmaster norms actually in the U.S. Championships, and I made one of my IM norms there. And part of the reason is because in the U.S. Championships you actually waive the foreign requirements because it's such a strong event. But I'd find that that's kind of unusual. Most players don't really make their norms that way. Most of them do make them in events like this just because they don't have to worry about playing the right people. They don't have to worry about other aspects. Like U.S. Championships, you're not thinking about norms, right? I just happen to make them. But this event is a little bit different, and honestly, if you play well in an event like this, it just is much easier because you don't have to worry about getting the requirements. You just play chess, and if you get a good enough performance, you're there.
You made a good point about the national championships. Is every national championship that way, where you can...
To my knowledge, yes. If you make a norm in a national championship, there's no foreign requirement. But almost every other event, you have to play a certain amount of foreign players, and that's one of the challenges of running an event like this, as I'm sure you know.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk to the organizer later on in this show. And we're going to hold your hand out there in chess world because there have been people who have been playing chess for years and they still are having trouble figuring out the system of norms. People come into the chess club all the time and they say, how does one become a grandmaster? And it's not a simple answer because it's not a simple task. So the people who are in this tournament will be tasked with quite a lot. Let's take a look at the roster for our Grandmaster Norm section. It's our top section, the most lucrative here, and we see the many federations involved. Now, this does have to be an international tournament. We cannot just have international norms required and awarded here in the U.S. in an all-American tournament. We've got to have different flags that people are playing under. Now, in this GM event, we have 4 grandmasters instead of the 3 that you typically see and that are required. Pavlo Vorontsov, Mark Paragua, Grandmaster Akshat Chandra from right here in St. Louis, and also from St. Louis, Grandmaster Danish Borosh. And then look at the contenders here, all the international masters and the women grandmasters. At the bottom here, they have quite the hill to climb. Josh, thoughts on this field?
I really like this field. We were talking about U.S. Championships earlier, which is always a great event to follow. But the only knock I would ever have on it is that we know almost all the players. It's very rare we'll get a newbie, maybe 1, maybe 2. This event, we have so many players who I've never seen before. And to me, that makes the event really exciting. We have the women's grandmaster from Greece. We have, Vorontsov, I haven't seen too much play in the U.S., Kharmakulov, and there are just so many people who are new, and I'd like to see them play people we're familiar with, like Akshat Chandra and Tatav and Danish Borosh, just to see what happens. And to me, that's one of the interesting things about these events.
We've had Norm tournaments here for years at the Chess Club under different names. This is the first time we call it the Norm Congress. I love that name, by the way. But yeah, these tournaments are where you really get to be introduced to the stars. I don't want to be grandiose, but the stars of tomorrow, right? The chess players that we're going to know for years to come, especially around here, maybe in St. Louis as well. So it is exciting to meet these new players.
Exactly, and some of them end up attending school in St. Louis if they like it here, if they get picked up by one of the universities. So if you like one of these players, you might get the chance to see them play more.
A lot of recruitment happens.
A lot of recruitment happens, and again, to me at least, it's very exciting because this is not something which used to happen all that often. So it's really exciting to have that here.
That is something I actually want to ask you about, the rarity of these Norm tournaments. I mean, if one player drops out, the whole thing isn't a Norm tournament anymore. It's very, very fragile.
Norm tournaments are a special breed because it's not like a big open tournament where, say, you lose a few games, you're like, I hate chess, I hate life, I want to withdraw and go to the Bahamas. You can't do that during a Norm event. You're required to play all the games because if you withdraw, no one can get a Norm, as you pointed out. So everyone's stuck, which means that if you're having a rough event and you're 0-3, everyone's going to try to beat up on you for the rest of the event. And it's a rough experience. I'm sure almost all chess players have been there at one point in their life.
Now, the two big fields, we've already taken a look at the top one. Let's take a look at the International Master Norm field for this event, field number 2. Now, we will have 3 International Masters in this field. They are kind of like gatekeepers, kind of the 4 Grandmasters we saw before. And then we have FIDE Masters and National Master. National Master is a title awarded by the United States Chess Federation, or U.S. Chess. Justin Wang, who came up really big at the last Norm event we had here, I believe he got first place. And then, of course, National Master Aaron Grabinski as well. A lot of new players here as well. And, Josh, they say that chess is a young person's game, but there is one player in this field that's going to challenge that.
Yes, Tensel Turgut is 51 years old, a very experienced FIDE master. I actually know him because I played him once, and I actually also played his son, Aiden Turgut, who's one of the top juniors in the country for his age. So it's kind of a chess-playing family, and very, very friendly guy. I look forward to seeing how he does. He doesn't play that often, but between 51, and there are some real kids in this field. Justin Wang is only 12 years old, and he's already pretty strong, so it's a little frightening. I don't know how these guys are actually national masters because their FIDE ratings are high enough to be FIDE masters. They're over 2,300, so I think it's just a matter of, formality for them to be FIDE masters. They're not really just national masters. Indeed.
In this tournament, we have a pretty simple format to understand. We have the two field, 10-player round robins, all play all. So this is not a Swiss system. This is a very simple system to follow. In fact, you can go online right now and see the pairings for every round on uschesschamps.com. The games are one time control, game in 90 minutes, with a 30-second delay from move 1.
30-second increment.
30-second increment.
Making sure, because if you don't get that extra time, it's a much shorter time control.
Pardon me, 30-second increment. Indeed, 30-second increment. That is a big deal. That time will be added to your clock with each move. And as for the schedule, if you're on Chess 24 and US Chess Champs right now, you'll see there's no games going on. We haven't begun the first round. This is kind of like a pre-show. The schedule is as follows. Tonight we will have the very first round for both fields. Both fields play the same schedule at 5 p.m. Central. All these times are Central. Rounds 2 and 3 will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Rounds 4 and 5 will be Saturday at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Rounds 6 and 7 will be Sunday at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then rounds 8 and 9 have their own days. Round 8 will be on Monday, the 12th, at 11 a.m., and round 9 will be Tuesday, the 13th, at 11 a.m.
And I can tell you that those last 2 rounds can be a bit of a minefield mentally, because I've done a schedule like this before, and you play 2 rounds a day, which is pretty tough to do. It can be a long day if you play 2 long games. You play all these games with 2 games a day, then you play 1 game, and then you relax, right? You think you're done, but you have another game the next day, and When the schedule changes, I find that that's where people can kind of get thrown off. Some people don't react as well. Even though they get a game off, they actually sometimes will play worse in that last game because of that. So it's something for the players to be wary of. Maybe it's just me, but I find that that's actually a challenge.
How hard is it to play in 2 of these rounds per day?
I would say that, well, I think the players are fortunate. You guys chose a really good time control of 90 and 30-second increment. I'm a little bit old school in that I like slightly longer time controls for 1 game a day tournaments. But when it's 2 games a day, you do not want to be sitting at the board 12 hours in one day. Then you have to choose between sleeping and eating. It's just not a pleasant experience. So that gives you a little bit of time, it makes it easier. But I'll tell you, if, say, you're defending some long end game for 5 hours, which I've done my fair share of, and then you have to play another game that day, an hour or 2 hours later, it's a long day. And you have to make sure you're in good shape, your energy reserves are there. And I'll tell you, at the end of the tournament, the person who's had a lot of those games, they're going to be more tired than the people who have played a little bit shorter.
And speaking of energy levels, a lot of the international players are residing in the United States, but I'm going to have to check about which ones were actually flying from different time zones, because jet lag might play
for sure.
an issue there.
Yeah, if someone's flying from Uzbekistan, like Khamrakulov is, that's going to be pretty rough if they're just flying in yesterday. I don't know if that's actually the case, but that's certainly going to be an additional challenge, and probably some of the St. Louis locals will have a slight advantage in the first round, maybe the first 2 rounds. But we'll see. These are professional players, and they're used to it.
And speaking of professional players, yeah, there's going to be money involved. If we didn't mention that yet, let's take a look at the prizes here for the top section. First of all, Josh, take a listen to this. Now, if you finish 6th through 10th place, the bottom 5 spots, you get $600, $700 for 5th, $800 for 4th, $1,000 for 3rd, $1,500 for 2nd, and $2,000 for first place.
Those are pretty healthy prizes, I should say, especially for a norm tournament. When I was playing my norm tournaments, if I wanted to play a round robin like this, I would usually have to pay $300 or $400 just to play, fly myself in, do all of this. And if you don't come out with a norm, you just lose lots of money, and you're very depressed. So the fact that they're providing these prizes for everyone, helping them out with their expenses a little bit, these players, they're lucky. I'm just going to say it. These players are very fortunate, and I'm actually happy that this is available now, because you know what? This is going to encourage more chess players. More people are going to become grandmasters and international masters. But of course, I hope they at least have to work for it, because I'd like to think that to become a grandmaster, not that easy yet.
Oh, for sure. And of course, with the second field, they also have their prize fund, a very healthy one at that. For the International Master Norm Field, the bottom 5 spots will receive $400. 5th place will get $500. 4th place, $600. 3rd place, $700. 2nd place, $1,000. And first place, pretty impressive, $1,200. So these players sometimes are not even they're not even thinking of the prize fund. They really are thinking about those points. They're thinking about the wins.
Definitely not.
So let's take a look tonight at 5 p.m. We have our first round. Let's take a look at the pairings for the GM norm section. This is pretty interesting. Now, look, we don't know. Everyone's even so far. Okay, in the upcoming rounds, we'll see who is the most important to win. We might get into a situation where eventually down the line no one can norm, and now we're simply looking at who's going to make first place. But as we're looking at these players here, Josh, a lot of them we haven't seen before, what are your thoughts on this pairing?
I mean, it's easy to say, but I actually really like almost all these pairings. I would say that Khamrakulov I've never really seen play, and John Bartholomew I've played against since we were teenagers, so I know him quite well. So again, I like to see people I really know play people I don't know that well at all. Solokidou against Advait Patel, Adi Patel. I've seen Adi play a few times, but I don't know much about him, and of course, Solokidou I barely know at all. Danish and Tatev I both know pretty well, but I'm always looking forward to that game. They both have interesting styles. So I think that could be a good one. Sometimes when you see 2 grandmasters play in a GM norm event, it can be slightly lame. Sometimes they're not that ambitious because they already have their norms. They're just kind of playing to knock out other people, or for whatever reason, maybe financially. But these are both players who I don't think will have that attitude. They're both going to probably want to play, want to fight. So that could also be a good game. So really, I don't think, and Gurevich against Vorontsov, also, very interesting game to watch. So again, I don't think you have a bad game among them, which always is a good thing.
Now I'm looking at right there the fourth pairing, Akshat Chandra and the other in the double grandmaster game.
Yeah.
Are they're going to fight in that? They're not going to go for an early draw? What do you think about that?
You never really know. It really depends. When I was in these situations, especially the first round, you usually don't, back off too much. The first round, you want to get a head start. I can tell you that when you're trying to win a tournament or make a norm, if that first round really sets the tone. If you play a nice first round game and win that first round, it sets the tone for the rest of the event. Whereas, if you do really badly that first round or don't really fight too much, it can sometimes affect you adversely for the rest of the event. And I'd say it's not a good idea. But again, Akshat's a young player. He's trying to get some good games in. Paragua is a fighting player, very interesting player. I just don't see that being a lame game at all. So I would say we're going to see 5 good fights.
We've got interesting players. We've got fighting players in that first field. But also, we've got a lot of charismatic players in that field. Like, I'm looking at half the field, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to have them down here for interviews because they're very well-spoken individuals. In the chess world, the more well-spoken, the more marketable, as in life. Let's take a look at the IM norm field, the pairings for tonight, starting at 5 p.m. Central. And also, now you'll take a look, the 3 boards in the middle, they have the International Masters, Luis Torres, Sergei Matsenko, and Joel Banawa, and then, of course, the up-and-comers who are trying to take them down and get those points. What do you think of this field, Josh?
Again, I don't think there's too much that there's not to like. Justin Wang, of course, very exciting because he's so young and so strong already that you're interested to see, like, is he going to start knocking off these IMs or is he going to struggle a little bit? A lot of it depends on form and how well the IMs are playing. Matsenko is by far the highest-rated player in the event. And it'll be interesting to see if he just dominates the field or whether he struggles against these up-and-coming players. He faces Canadian Chi Yu in the first round. And Josh Colas against Joel Banawa. Josh Colas is outrated, but at the same time, he's been almost 2,400. So he's been to that level where Joel is. So I think that could also be, and he has the white pieces, I think that could also be quite a game.
And one thing we have talked about is where everyone stands with the norms that they already have. Yeah. You mentioned Josh Colas not meeting the rating requirement as of yet. For the International Master norm, you have to achieve a 2,400 rating live at any time. Once you have it, doesn't matter if you go underneath it again. You need to achieve that along with the norms to get the title.
Very true.
Josh Colas has 2 International Master norms, so he's looking for his 3rd. And also he has 1 Grandmaster norm. So very impressive there for Josh.
And the Grandmaster norm does count towards your IM norms. So he's basically set for the norms. He just needs to hit 2,400. Exactly.
There you go.
And he got very close a couple years ago, but he didn't quite touch it. Now he has a long way to go, but if he can pick up the form he showed in 2016, I think he'll for sure get there.
I would imagine it's mathematically impossible this go-round to meet the rating.
If he went 9-0, he would have a vague chance, but probably not. So I would say not this event, but it doesn't mean that he's still not chasing more norms. Why not pick up a norm,
Right.
And you can tell, I would say players, for example, let's take a good friend of mine, Tatev Abrahamyan, in the Grandmaster section, right? She has 3 International Master norms. I think she actually has more than 3. However,
she said at least 3.
At
she
least
said,
3.
I don't even know how many I have.
Probably 4 or 5, to be quite honest. But her rating is, lower 2,300s. It's been higher 2,300s. So what that shows about a player is that she can perform extremely strong. And this is true of anyone who has all their norms but not the rating. But they're usually not consistent enough. They don't show consistent results. They might play really well and really badly and not make that rating requirement. Whereas, let's say they make a rating requirement but don't have the norms, and I believe there's at least 1 or 2 players who are like that. That usually means they're very consistent players, but they don't have those breakout results. They don't go on a tear and make those norms. So for everyone, the challenge is a little bit different. I personally kind of made them around the same time, so I was just volatile enough and just solid enough to kind of skate the line. But for most people, it's one or the other that they struggle with, the rating or the norms.
Now, sometimes whenever, I want to get back to more just general norm talk here, when we're not in specific norm tournaments where we have the perfect field, the round robin, when you're in the bigger events, do you know when you're going to, your possibility of making a norm when you get close, or is it just kind of a pleasant surprise afterward, like, oh yeah, I got a norm too?
I would say it depends on the person. For me, I really cared about my norms for a while, and then I actually, when I went 2 years, 3 years almost without making a Grandmaster norm. I was stuck at 2 norms, and I just kind of stopped thinking about it, and I actually played better. And I made my norm when I wasn't thinking about my norm at all until the very end of the tournament in that U.S. Championship in 2008. So for me, it was kind of better to not do that, but everyone has their own thing. Some people have either, like for example, some of the kids have parents who are calculating to the exact point the whole tournament. Some people just kind of go with the flow, but I'd say when you're chasing a norm, it's quite a feeling. I actually miss it a little bit. It's nice having the title and not worrying about it, but at the same time, I miss that extra motivation, and I think that a lot of these players are definitely counting those points and really seeing if they're going to make it.
And indeed, the big question is if. Not every player who makes it above 2,000 will become a Grandmaster, of course. This is a very selective bunch. Only a few can excel. I know many local players who have become stuck at FIDE Master or the like, and they're not going to see the IM title. Just because you're older doesn't mean it's unattainable. However, it becomes less likely. So it's easier to do it when you're younger. I hate to use the word easier, but like it is. It's more attainable. But we have a lot of stats in front of us. You keep seeing us looking down perhaps because there's a lot to look at. The rating requirement of 2,400 live for the International Master Norm. The rating requirement of 2,500 minimum for Grandmaster Norm. And then
that's not for the norms. That's for the title requirements. For
Pardon
the norms,
me.
you need to usually outperform the base rating.
Terminology, I'm confused.
It's
yes.
easy to do, believe me. It took me a long time to get it down.
It's
only because I chased it relentlessly for many years that I kind of memorized it. And for all I know, FIDE could change it, and then I'll be clueless again. But now I don't have to care.
Right. Yeah, what?
Now, whatever.
And we're talking with the organizers, the arbiters, about all this stuff. Yes, alongside the 3 norms, you need the rating requirement. And I want to talk with our guest coming in here soon, Richard Pointer, about the points required, because in some cases they're different player to player. It depends on the average rating of the opposition combined. So let's take a look at one of our good partners in this event, Chess24. You know, they're one of the best presenters of chess in the entire world when it comes to the digital realm, and certainly our partners in USChessChamps.com. When we come back, we're going to be talking with the organizer of this tournament, the man who brought the players in, Richard W. Pointer. We'll be right back here from St. Louis.
A question on Twitter from Damas. I should not have pronounced that. That was a bit of a trap, yeah?
For those of you who are new to chess, it might look like ba3 is an illegal move here, because white advances pawn 2 squares, not 1. But it's a little something we call en passant. And you can do that, but you have to do it instantly. You can't wait for a move, like let's say play king e7, king g2, and now try, because should I do it?
I'm sorry. This is too funny for words.
This is a software glitch? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot.
Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Yeah, I'll play 4 against Lawrence. And now he's going to play something against me which we discussed at length during the course of my stay. Yeah, he told me this is excellent. d5, this was what I was kind of hoping for, because now I think e5 is quite strong. No, Lawrence, this is not how chess works. Sadly, it would be much, much more fun if chess actually worked like this. But I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. Well, that's me regretting what I just said. How did I get from there to here is a little bit beyond me. And what's worse, I will never hear the end of it. My quality of life has just gone downhill tremendously, because I'm actually sharing the office with the guy.
And we're back here in St. Louis. Hello, welcome back to the 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress pre-show, you might say. I'm Ben Simon, joined with my special guest at this time, and the very first special guest of this campaign, the organizer of this fine tournament, Richard W. Pointer. Richard, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I know that you are a big fan of the camera. I thank you very much for coming on.
Sure, thank you.
No, really, I've been wanting to talk to Richard for a long time because he's a really interesting guy, and these two fields were his doing. He's been stressing over this tournament. He's been making it as great as possible, and the players I know are happy because he has helped them out in this regard. This is a really international event, Richard, and how tough or easy was it to put this thing together to make it just absolutely perfect?
So this particular tournament was a little bit more difficult than normal. I didn't have a lot of time to put it together, just about a month. So normally I have 2 months to work on this to get everything in order. You can maybe see some of the, they're not quite mistakes, but strange oddities of this tournament because of the time frame that I had to organize it. You end up getting players that might, be the fourth GM in a GM section, which is not normal.
Well, how many times do you just get out the pencil and paper and like you're calculating math or stuff? I mean, a spreadsheet or whatever, just to make sure that everything is just so, because there's got to be an average rating, right?
Correct. So I'm doing a lot of work on FIDE's website, looking up basically ratings that are published, let's say, for January. Then you have to recalculate because these are February ratings, so I'm recalculating on the first of the month to make sure I know the norm number for each player.
You can't even lock it in from a past month, huh?
No, you can't. So, players can, let's say you're aiming for 6 points for your average norm performance. Well, some players, their rating could go down, and if they go down far enough, they've effectively changed the norm number to maybe 6.5. So it can maybe not be as locked in as you would hope.
Now I'm looking at the International Master Norm section, and all the players are in the same range. That is, besides the International Masters themselves, the other players who are looking for the norm, they're in the same rating range. And so their goal for the points, they have to finish 6 points out of a possible 9.
Correct.
And they will get an International Master Norm. So the GM section isn't quite as simple.
Yes.
There's different...
You'll notice the average rating is about 2470 in that section. But for each individual player, their opponent's average rating can vary wildly. So if you're one of the lower rated players in the GM section, you're going to have a lower norm number. So, for example, I believe Tatev has a 6-point norm, whereas somebody like Gurevich has a 6.5 point.
Right. And also, we have... Kamrakulov, 6.5, Gurevich, 6.5, Patel, 6.5, Bartholomew, 6.5. Those are what those players are trying to achieve. And then Solokidu and Abrahamian, the female players, who happen to be the last 2 seeds, are looking at 6 points because they have essentially the tougher field to play.
Correct, right.
And also, both of them can play for an IM norm, I understand.
Exactly. So it's just about your performance against the field. It doesn't matter if it's named a GM section. That really doesn't affect the way FIDE calculates.
That's just
norms.
how we organize.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, Richard, a lot of these players are internationally based. Do you have any language barriers? How do you get with some of these players we've never heard of before?
So it's great working here at the Chess Club because you can have players reach out to you. We get a whole bunch of emails throughout the year saying we'd love to play in one of these tournaments. And the more we kind of publicize these and broadcast them, we end up getting a lot more enthusiasm. Right now we're organizing 2 of these types of tournaments per year, along with the 4 classics, which are a little bit higher level tournaments. So a lot of interest. It's actually getting easier, I think, to organize these tournaments as more people express interest and the word gets out that, oh, it's great to play here in St. Louis. We try to make the conditions as great as possible. So
I like the name. Did you come up with Norm Congress?
I did. There was a tournament here in St. Louis, many tournaments actually, called the St. Louis Chess Congress or something similar to that. I just think it's an interesting name, and since we're the chess capital of the United States, according to the U.S. Senate, should call at least one of our tournaments a Congress.
I like it because to me it's a real throwback. It seems like the U.S. Championship of the 19th century. The U.S. Chess Congress. There are still plenty of tournaments called Congress in the nation, but I thought it was pretty interesting. Richard, what are you doing after this? You going to Disneyland?
No. So as an organizer, what's kind of interesting, duties are kind of separated. So an arbiter is in charge of making sure that the tournament functions from a rules perspective, but the organizer's job is really to make sure that the players are accommodated, if they have special dietary requests or housing needs, or even if they want to go take a tour around the town on a half-off day or something like this. It's my job to make sure that I answer those questions and help them, fulfill their needs. So really, I'll be kind of working over the next 6 days to make sure everything runs smoothly on that end.
We've got a couple hours until round one starts. Are all of the players in town?
I believe they are. It was a little worrying today. I looked at the sheet for check-ins, and some of the names hadn't been checked off that were expected last night. But
you never know.
But you do never know. I mean, the organizer's job is to make sure they all show up. So they have all arrived, and it should be a good first round.
Well, Richard, alongside the Chief TD, IA Mike Kummer, and the Deputy Arbiter, International Arbiter, that's what IA stands for, also Tony Rich. Those two men will be running this thing. Richard Pointer, the organizer, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and we hope to talk to some of the names who have made this tournament possible coming up in the next few days. All right, let's take our final break on our pre-show, and when we come back, Josh Friedel and I will give our final thoughts going into today's first round.
A moment comes in chess when you need to test yourself at a different level. Chess24 Premium offers the tools that you need to reach your maximum potential. From hundreds of interactive video lessons to becoming part of the Chess24 community. You can analyze with friends or coach your students live. You get 24/7 coverage of chess news and events, access to premium analysis and commentary, and the chance to interact with grandmasters and other top players and coaches. Get advice from the best and even challenge them to a battle. Be the best chess player you can be. It's time to level up your game with Chess24 Premium membership.
There's a weekend vacation, a one-tank trip in a nearby city you won't want to skip. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family, infinity plus a ton. There's museums full of art and super fun slides, upside-down concretes, twisty, turny rides, houses full of magic, some with butterflies, gardens growing flowers, parks with giant eyes. St. Louis is the stop for non-stop fun. So much fun for your family, infinity plus a ton.
Be surprised, be intrigued, be delighted. The World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis is nothing you'd expect and everything you love. 3 galleries highlight the history, culture, and creativity behind the game. Explore chess in ways you never imagined. It's a one-of-a-kind cultural institution where rare artifacts and world-class art play together. The World Chess Hall of Fame. Mind, art, experience.
Hello and welcome back to our final segment here for the preview show of the 2018 St. Louis Norm Congress, the GM and IM Norm event. I'm Ben Simon, along with Grandmaster Josh Friedel, who will be the man analyzing the games in the upcoming days, telling you where the good moves were and where the bad moves were. Josh, any final thoughts on this tournament and these fields?
Well, one of the things I forgot to mention about the GM field, which I found very interesting, was that the field can kind of be divided into 2 sections. Those about 30 years old, maybe give or take a year or two, and those who are 20 years old or a bit under. So it's going to kind of be a battle of generations in addition to IMs versus GMs and other things like that. So I thought that that's kind of an interesting subplot to that particular event.
It is an interesting subplot. There is a divide there. That's a very good point. We look forward to bringing this event to you through Tuesday, the 13th of February. Remember, there are 9 rounds. Each day, you will get at least 1 round, but sometimes 2. So tonight at 5 p.m., we will have round number 1, just a couple hours from now. Tomorrow we'll have 2 rounds. Saturday we'll have 2 rounds. Sunday we'll have 2 rounds. And then on Monday we will have the penultimate, round 8. And then on Tuesday, the final, round 9. And even if the norms are out of reach at that point, this tournament doesn't end. We're going to the end. You will be playing, the players will be playing for up to over $1,000, up to $2,000 in prize money. So this is definitely not the only story here, the norms. There are many stories here. The battle of the ages, the battle for the prize money, and the battle to advance to get your doctorate of chess.
Well, speaking of doctorates, even in the second section, we have one with Tancel Turgut, right? He's a cardiologist.
He is a cardiologist.
He's a cardiologist, so he's going to be fighting for all the cardiologists and people over 40 years old because he's the only one. So he's going to be fighting his own battle, and I'm going to be rooting for him personally. I'll tell you that.
He may be an emotional favorite. Turgut, actually, the reason why I like him, and I haven't even met the guy, is because I sent out an email survey to some of these players, and he went above and beyond, giving me some details. I love this guy. I need to meet him. We need to talk to him. So this show was produced by the Chess Club's World's Greatest Beat Team, Isaac Schranz, the graphics and audio man. Our technical director is Danny Machuca. For Grandmaster Josh Friedel, my name is Ben Simon. We'll see you tomorrow and every day through the 13th at 2 p.m. So until then, so long from the Show Me State.
Don't miss it.